Everyone, it is the appointed hour of 12 seconds past 5:30, so I will call meeting number 19 for August 1, 2023 to order. We have regrets from Councillor Runge and Vic. I will call for some amendments here. One is that the call to order will not be from Acting Mayor Scott Elliott, but rather from myself, only because I'm home day early from a fishing trip because of fog. I will, and then also we have late agenda attachments, K1, a staff report on Quesnel workplace development strategy implementation, and also K3 staff report, admin report 86/23 housing accelerator grant from Director Turner will be canceled. And that is it. So if I could get a motion now to adopt the agenda as amended. Councillor McKelvey, Councillor Tony Goulet, any questions? All in favor? Carried. Did I do the recognition? No. Yes, no. I will recognize that we meet on the traditional territory of the LHTAKO DENE Nation. Adoption of the regular minutes, a motion to adopt regular council minutes July 18, but I do have one little glitch there, and that is at the top of page 7 of 60 regarding Resolution 23-18-234. It doesn't indicate the outcome of that vote. It's obviously carried, but it doesn't say carried, so just need to add that in there.
It does on the next page.
Pardon me?
It does at the top of the next page.
Okay. I'm terribly sorry. I see way up there. Okay, forget it. That's good. But you can't fault me for not reading the minutes. Maybe I read them wrong. So a motion, therefore, to adopt the minutes as circulated. Moved Councillor Rudenberg, seconded Councillor McKelvey. All in favor? Carried. Okay, now we will go to now we will go to, we do have no presentations, no delegations. We will now go to the Quesnel Workforce Development Strategy, and we have Eric Burton, President and CEO of Factor 5 Group. Eric, are you there? There you are in true flesh and, well, I guess virtual reality, so the floor is yours.
Hey, well, thanks very much, Your Worship. I'm really excited to be here with you this evening, virtually at least, to present the Trailblazing Workforce Strategy. We're really excited about it. So I'll get right into it here. I'm going to share my screen. Okay, so what the trailblazing workforce concept is what we're driving forward with the name of this strategy. It's because, you know, Quesnel is known as a trailblazing community. It's something that the community takes pride in. And we're tackling a really important challenge that communities all across Canada are struggling with, and that is related to workforce development. And so what we're really trying to embrace that pioneering spirit to get on the leading edge to tackle some of these challenges by finding local solutions. So I'll work through some of the methodology, some key insights, get into this strategy and the tactical plan, and management plan and performance framework. I'm going to try to keep it short. I do get a little bit carried away because I'm excited about workforce development, but I want to make sure to leave time for some questions. So we kicked off this project in the fall of 2022. And the first focus was we conducted some secondary research. So we're looking around, doing a scan, looking at data, looking at documents. But then we began to engage the key employers in the community, interviewing them to better understand the challenges they were facing, but also looking for some trends and the opportunities that they saw to find local solutions. We then conducted an employer survey, and from that we hosted a series of employment roundtables, one focused on small employers, one focused on large employers. And from that, put together the trends and developed a strategy, a lens through which to look at the challenges and opportunities. And we put that together and worked with staff to fine tune that, reaching out to some of the stakeholders just to fine tune some of the actions before bringing them forward. So some of the insights, first off, we've got to really acknowledge that the challenges that we're facing are a generation in the making. We've had jobs without people and people without jobs for over 10, if not 20 years. This has been a demographic shift that we have been seeing and yet not really being able to tackle. At the same time, the community of Quesnel has had some challenging years behind it, with record-breaking fires, some closures, and then the pandemic, which really shifted the values of workers and what they were looking for in employment. So this is the context in which we began developing this plan. Now, we took a look at what the top priorities of employers were, and there was a fair amount of consensus that attracting employees is key, but it's not going to be successful if we're not able to retain them. So while attraction is on the top of mind, being able to retain them is key to long-term success. Now, as we went along, we also found that there are some foundational barriers to employment. And the one that came up in every conversation was housing. And I no doubt that's not a big surprise. It's also a crisis challenging communities across the country. But what we wanted to do is, through the workforce development lens, what can we do to find some local solutions around housing, recognizing that housing is something that is being tackled in other areas by the city. So some of the other two major barriers that we saw were childcare and transportation. So we consider these foundational barriers to employment that we try to build some tactics to be able to address. But on the whole, the trend of the conversation really pointed to a breakdown in communication between demographics. We've got an older generation that is leaving the workforce. We've got a younger generation coming in. The younger generation isn't connecting with the place of employment in the same way that the older generation who is leaving. And there's opportunities to improve the communication within what we call the workforce ecosystem, right? So when we built this concept of the workforce ecosystem, when we put the local employers right in the middle of it, and we're thinking about, how can we support the local employers to better communicate with the other stakeholders in that ecosystem, right? So, because that's something that is, the city is uniquely well positioned. Economic development is very much about relationship building. And a lot of these stakeholders are people that the economic development team interface with all the time. So being able to use communication as a tactic to be able, or a strategy to be able to foster some solutions that support the health of that workforce ecosystem. So this was an analysis model we built for the project, and then we moved it forward to build out a strategy. So the vision, the big picture of what we are really looking for is that the city of Quesnel is resilient, healthy, and prosperous as a result of workforce development. Now, the mission, in order to achieve that vision and bring it to life, is to leverage your in-house expertise, available funding, and community partnerships to improve workforce attraction, retention, and training. And then finally, the strategy on how to get that to happen, like what to do in order to make that happen. Trailblaze communication between employers, job seekers, employees, and service providers. So when we start to break that down, there are three major goals: attraction, retention, and training. So when it comes to attraction, we want to trailblaze communication between employers and job seekers to connect employers with the workforces they need to succeed. The second, the retention, is trailblazing communication between employers, employees, and service providers to address barriers to workforce retention, including access to childcare, housing, and transportation. And then finally, training, we're trailblaze the communication between employers and training service providers to improve local access to education and training resources. So at every turn, the strategic lens that we're applying here is how can communication improve workforce attraction, retention, and training? And the idea of the strategic lens is that not only did we apply it in coming up with this strategy, but it's something that it lives beyond the strategy. As new information comes up, as new challenges, new opportunities present themselves to the city, this is the lens through which to view them from a workforce development perspective. Now, as we start to build this out, we start to see some tactical actions that can be done to move those goals forward. So they're broken down by each goal section, and we have a series of tactics: a family relocation project, Project Comeback 2.0, which was a successful project before the pandemic, community marketing materials, building on and enhancing the existing materials, a familiarization tour to be able to really steward and bring people who are either prospective new residents or new residents, show them around the community, make sure that they feel right at home and that they are familiar with all of the resources available to them. The second major goal is retention. So employer policy dialogues, that's an opportunity to work with the chamber who already have the 12 at 12 concept and really working with them to support, to identify and address some of the challenges around workforce, updating the child care plan, residential development. So on this piece, what we found was that there's a lot of employers that are already or would consider making investments in rental spaces or properties. So what we thought was just being able to communicate the market to the residential developers would help facilitate investment, to be able to quantify and qualify the number of employers that are saying, look, we're interested in spaces. Then transit advocacy, trying to advocate for improved provincial funding model for Quesnel, and in HR best practices, working with employers in the community to share their best practices. What is working, because a lot has changed since the pandemic, and the idea is building a sense of community and being able to share those best practices with one another. And then finally, in the training spaces, building out the local career program. The high school already has a local career program, but the economic development team has access to funding partners and agencies, and it's about keeping top of mind, looking for opportunities to support what is already happening at that local career program level. Government resource utilization, that's British Columbia and the government of Canada, they are spending money to try to address challenges. We want to get as many of those dollars flowing into local employers' hands to support them in their success. And then finally, towards the end of the 3-year time horizon, doing another labor market study to get your fingers back on the pulse of the labor market. So from a management plan, you've got great city staff. That's the first leg of the management plan is to lean on them. The second piece is to work with consultants and contractors to be able to leverage funding from other sources to be able to tackle top priority projects. And then finally, supporting partners in their leadership on workforce development initiatives. And then we break these down, providing some estimates on duration and budget, and then get into a performance framework. And the performance framework tracks right alongside the tactical plan, giving the outcome, what you want to see happen in the world, the measure on how you're going to know if it's happening, and then a target to get you started. And the key here is to be able to use these to facilitate dialogue about whether the strategy is working, what are the challenges that are emerging and opportunities. So the performance framework is really intended as a way to facilitate nuanced, detailed discussion about what's going on in the workforce and what can be done to improve. So I hope I haven't gone over my time, but I'm excited about any questions or comments you might have.
Okay, thank you, Eric. Questions? Councillor McKelvey.
Thank you, Eric. I'm just wondering how many employers participated in the survey?
That's a good question. Off the top of my head, I don't actually know that. I believe it is 36, but I'd have to confirm that.
I had the same number in my head, so I think we're probably in that ballpark, yeah.
Okay, good. We agree. So, okay, any other questions? Councillor Elliott.
Thanks, Eric. Thanks for the presentation, and you deserve a gold star. I think you were 3 seconds over 15 minutes, so that's the first time ever in the history of council that I've been on. So good for you. But it's a great report, and there's a lot in there. I was really interested to hear you say that there are employers in town that are interested in investing in housing. Can you delve into that a bit further?
Yeah. So So when the survey, 10% said that they were currently investing in housing. 9% said that they were interested in potentially investing in housing. So that's 19% of the employers engaged in identified an interest in that. But more anecdotally, when we talk to some of the major institutional employers in the community, they certainly identify that it's critical. They can't bring in the staff that they're looking for if they're not able to get them housing. And so they're looking at how they can do that, especially, it can be challenging for public institutions to be able to make those investments, but they see that as critical. So they're looking for creative ways of being able to secure spaces for incoming employees. So from my perspective, as I said, what we've proposed is just being able to quantify the demand from employers for spaces. I think is a huge tool that can support residential investment. I would say more generally, my view is that employers have a unique interest in investing in housing, where there are employers that also happen to have the wherewithal to make investments. There's it's a double whammy. I mean, because you can make an investment and make profit on the housing development, but you're also able to build housing that allows you to have a workforce so that you can be successful in your business, right? So in my view, there's a lot of potential when you think about engaging the business community and engaging employers in being able to foster investment in residential development.
Yeah, okay, thanks for that. Yeah, I think we've been trying in the past, and we're just going to continue that because it's just so important. You talked about family relocation and trying to attract. In my job, I get to see new people coming in all the time, and I'm curious in other locations if you've been able to reach out and help figure out how many people are coming in. We know that we've got the census every few years and things like that, but it really doesn't get right down to the nuts and bolts of it. Have you delved into that in other communities before?
No, not specifically. I mean, that's a good point. But I think the challenge is getting good data on that. And there are some new sources of private data. Like there's census data that we largely rely on, but there's also new sources of data that are able to help paint that picture a little more clearly. In this case, the relocation project is really focused on trying to build a network between employers so that they're able to communicate with each other about leads, right? So if I'm an employer and I'm bringing in someone who has a partner who will also need a job, if I have an active network and a process for engaging other employers and being able to help find employment for significant others, that's what's going to help land those families in the community. So building a lead management system similar to an approach we would take with investment, but doing it for workforce attraction and family relocation.
Yep. Okay, thanks. I appreciate that. That's helpful. And just looking at the list of that you've got here, there are things, obviously, quite a few things that we're working on right now. I'm sure we can get better, we can tweak things, but the budget, typically, I don't know if this goes to staff or to you, some of these things are pretty high priced. Are we thinking about grant funding for all? Yeah, it's all grant. I'm getting a nod from Amy that it's basically grant funding that we're looking for. Eric, thanks again for the presentation. It's very valuable.
Okay, thank you. And now I go to Councillor Rudenberg, please.
Thank you, and good evening, Eric. So actually, I have a follow-up to the question around the housing piece with employers. We know that we have community employers who are looking at, availability of places to build because they can't find the housing. So for me, there's a bit of a tie in there that if they start to make these developments, then there are other pieces they can add to it. It's not just about having a space for their employees to live, but perhaps they can include childcare spaces, right? So that there's that dual role that happens there. But having said that, we know childcare is sorely needed in this community, especially for the much younger aged children, because the ratio between childcare worker and child is very small, right? The problem is trying to get the childcare workers to the community. We have a very delicate balance with who we have here already, and I know that there's a childcare that just closed down this past spring or early summer. So it's really great to say we need more childcare spaces, but we don't have the childcare workers, and it's not because of lack of housing, it's because there's a whole huge dynamic within the childcare services themselves around the training, the costs, the lack of proper pay, et cetera. So there's a lot of nuances to creating more childcare spaces other than just saying we need them. The transit advocacy, I noticed that was on your list of projects. So I'm very curious at how you can poke BC Transit into giving more money, because they've politely told us, you can do whatever you want with your transit system, but we're not giving you any more money right now. And they've said that across the province. So how do you propose to be able to open up their wallets?
Okay, so I agree with your comments about housing. I mean, what we're dealing with is what I call wicked problems, which are intertwined problems. And that's, in my view, why strategy is so important, because strategy helps to say, like, okay, well, this is where we're going to start in being able to try to tackle this. And the childcare, that's, a huge challenge. That's why we prioritized updating the childcare plan in order to be able to figure out how to be solving that challenge so that it doesn't continue to be a barrier. So not easy solutions. Now, when it comes to transit, again, don't have a magic wand, but we identified the challenge, right? That the formula itself is a barrier to a vibrant transportation system that is critical to workforce development. So we built an advocacy piece saying, well, what we can do is we can articulate the implications for workforce development, for the economy, and try to get that, continue to get that on the table with some recommended solutions. So, I'm not saying that it will be a silver bullet, but I believe that if we're able to show the implications for the broader economy, then that strengthens and helps build a compelling case for revisiting that model, which is required in order for transportation to be what you need to get your workforce to work.
Right. So the other nuance is the province is really pushing, especially in larger communities, of housing hubs around transportation corridors. I mean, our transportation corridor is a highway. I don't know how we do that, but I know that they look very favorably on communities that can build housing around transportation corridors. So there's that balance there, right, between needing transportation and building along the major transportation corridors. And I know that Scott kind of took a little bit of my thunder around the whole budget piece, because I was looking at this going, there's a lot of in-house expertise that can be used for some of this budgeting projects, but it's good to hear that we'll be looking at grants too. Thank you very much for your presentation.
My pleasure.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Rudenberg. Do I have anyone else? I did have several questions, but Councillor Rudenberg, you covered them off very nicely. You must have been looking over my notes. It's all good, because I did have a question on housing and another one on, I think, childcare and also on transit, but I think you've covered them off nicely. So with that, if there's no further comments or questions from the council side, Eric, thank you very much, and we look forward to working with you further. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Okay, moving along on our agenda, we do not have any items arising from previous special closed meetings, nor do we have any unfinished business. We have no committee reports. We have no council reports and discussion items, but under city staff reports, we have admin report 87/23, Quesnel Workplace or Workforce Development Strategy Manager Reid to report.
Thank you. The purpose of this report is just to receive direction from council to begin implementation of the tactics outlined in the strategy. So the new trailblazing workforce strategy includes several initiatives which were compiled after consultation with local employers and business service providers. Several initiatives may be eligible for grant funding, including funding through the Labor Market Partnership Program, Northern Development Initiative Trust marketing initiatives, and the Rural Economic Development Infrastructure Program, which is currently open for applications. So the recommendation is that Quesnel City Council direct staff to work towards implementation of initiatives outlined in the strategy and to pursue funding opportunities to support these initiatives as they come available.
Okay, thank you. Before I go to you, Councillor Elliott, I'm just wondering on the recommendation, would it be more appropriate to place the pursuit of funding opportunities first and then the work second? Because the way that is worded, it looks like the work could come before the funding opportunities are secured.
I think some can be absorbed into our current work, things like working with the Chamber of Commerce on 12 at 12. We've in honesty, already had some discussions around that and things like that, and starting to develop the projects out a little bit further so that we can go after the grant funding as it comes available.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Elliott. Thank you. Moved Councillor Elliott, seconded Councillor Rudenberg. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you for that. Now we go to admin report number 85, Fortis Operating Agreement, City Manager to report on behalf of Director Bolton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the purpose of this report is to obtain council approval for a new operating agreement with Fortis. This is basically just a renewal of an old agreement. Now, the agreement itself has changed somewhat. The first agreement was made in 1977, and since that there's been some changes. But essentially it covers off the same type of situation because they're still in the city doing their work. So the old agreement expires on December 31st. No really significant changes. This still includes the payment of a 3% franchise fee to the city. And that franchise fee is 3% of the gross revenues received by Fortis for the provision and distribution of all gas consumed within the city limits. And for this year, 2023, that totaled to just about $247,000. So that is maintained, and the actual form of the new agreement has been approved by the BC Utilities Commission and was actually approved and it was determined that basic format should be used for all renewals with all cities moving forward. So pretty standard boilerplate. The recommendation is that council approves the City of Quesnel entering into the attached operating agreement with Fortis Energy and that the mayor and corporate officer be authorized to execute all documents necessary to put that into effect. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. City Manager. Councillor Rudenberg.
So just a quick question to City Manager. It says UBCM here. Is that, like, did I miss something in the report that says City of Quesnel UBCM operating agreement? Is that supposed to be BCUC? No, was that in the header under admin report? I'm just curious because I didn't see UBCM on it or in the report.
I'm sorry, I don't,
So on the agenda,
yeah.
On the agenda.
so I guess under city staff report 2, administrative report, and then underneath, Fortis operating agreement, City of Quesnel, UBCM operating agreement.
It doesn't have that on the paper.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, okay, sorry.
That's just on the
Okay, well
electronic
then.
version. Yeah.
We're good then. I'm sure that it was probably an oops.
That must have
I was
just
trying
been
to
a
think where
glitch.
that fit in there, so
But thank you for reading it that closely.
you're more than welcome.
We all did. We just didn't want to embarrass you.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Quick question. I found it interesting that the last agreement was signed in 77. How long do we, because I didn't see that in this, do we know what the time is for this agreement, how far it's going to go?
Thank you. It was first signed in 1977. It's had renewal since then. I believe it's on a 5-year renewal basis.
Thank you.
But I'm not 100% sure on the 5-year, but it's a regular renewal basis, so this does happen.
That makes more sense. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? I've got a question, and that is regarding financial implications. It is stated that in 2023, the city received $246,000 from this agreement. Are you able to report or advise us as to how that number is trending over the last 5-year period?
It's a fairly consistent number is my recollection. I don't know what those numbers are, but it usually varies by a few $1,000s a year, because when you think about the gas usage, we're not a rapidly growing community. We haven't had a lot of different conversions. So I think it's a pretty static number, but I can certainly find the details of that from Director Bolton and get her to send those details to council about what that growth looks like.
Well, I guess another way of sort of rephrasing that question, is the franchise agreement, the payment to the city by Fortis, is that based on gas volume or price of gas?
That is based on total revenue. 3% of the gross revenues received for provision and distribution on all gas. So that would be price and volume.
So I would presume, therefore, that our share would rise proportionately with the rise in the cost billed to Fortis customers.
Presumably that would be correct, yes.
Okay, I look forward to maybe getting some more information on that. We do have a recommendation in there that council approves the entering into the agreement. So do I have a mover? Moved Councillor McKelvey, seconded Councillor Rudenberg. Any discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay, so that we have admin report on the Housing Accelerator Grant, which has been postponed, and that was noted at the outset of the meeting. Finally, we have item number. We don't have anybody rising or raising anything from council information package. And then moving to correspondence, we have a letter from the Ministry of Public Safety and Solicitor General on Surrey policing dated July 19. I wonder, Madam Clerk, if you could just summarize that letter, and then we'll call for some discussion.
I'm writing today to advise of a decision I've made under Section 2 of the Police Act to ensure adequate and effective policing in the Surrey and the province as a whole. The City of Surrey must continue its transition to the Surrey Police Service and comply with the requirements and directives I've set out for them. The adequate and effective level of policing required by the Police Act mandates that a sufficient number of trained officers are able to meet the jurisdiction's policing needs and ensure public safety. The recent decision by Surrey City Council to return to the RCMP without a plan to ensure the stability of the SPS has destabilized policing in that jurisdiction and has subsequent implications for policing in the rest of BC. This transition and the decision by the City of Surrey to reverse its reverse it is unprecedented. In particular, I was concerned that if the city wishes to follow through on its decision to retain the RCMP would not have the ability to hire enough officers to adequately and effectively police Surrey. Ministry staff are actively engaged with UBCM to provide additional information to all local governments. Ensuring the RCMP address BC's long-standing vacancy and resourcing pressures is critical priority for the provincial government. I also wish to inform you that I have appointed Jessica McDonald as the Strategic Implementation Advisor.
Okay, thank you very much. Before I open the floor for discussion, my take on this is that we're going to be paying very close attention to what's coming out at the UBCM. I'm sure that this matter will be, especially in the last paragraph where the Minister of Public Safety and Solicitor General alludes to the fact that he's proposing legislation, and I'm sure that that will be coming up at UBCM. The floor is open to comments and discussion. Councillor Rudenberg.
Thank you. So I haven't seen any resolutions coming forward in regards to this whole dog's breakfast that has happened. When they say that something's coming up in the fall, I highly doubt that it'll be in time for UBCM. Their wheels don't move that fast, but if it does, it'll be a discussion point for sure. I guess. You know, I think one of the concerns that all other local governments have is about the costs that we share in regards to division, admin, et cetera. And, you know, they say the minister says here, you know, we're going to, you know, try and make sure that we mitigate potential cost increase. I'm not sure how that's going to work when you lose a substantial number, a city that size, out of the admin pool. I'm not sure how they're going to be able to do that without losing something. You know, we all know that if the budget's the budget, then you have to delete something from it to keep it the same. So I'm really interested to see how they're going to make sure that they mitigate those potential cost pressures.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Rudenberg. Just further to that, I understand that, you know, it's too late for resolutions and too late for significant agenda changes at UBCM. However, I think a lot of us, most of us, all of us will be listening very closely to the Premier's address at the conclusion of the UBCM, and there may be some foreshadowing of what's coming down following.
So if I could just jump back in there, don't get me wrong. If this happens before UBCM, if there's a potential for some kind of legislation that happens before UBCM, there are opportunities to do resolutions off the floor. But I know that right now we haven't started any kind of consultation with them at all. So this is why I think that this is not going to happen until after.
Okay, we are all listening and watching. Councillor Elliott.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And yeah, I mean, we're all concerned about the potential cost implications for sure. But I'm just wondering also if, I mean, with them losing so many RCMP members there, if there's any chance that they might be, relocated to other areas as well. You know, we've got the highest allotment of RCMP that we've ever had in the history here, but we still got challenges because of, mitigating circumstances, injuries, or maternity, or whatever it is. So it'd be nice to see if the province first, before they travel elsewhere, gets backstopped. So I'm hoping that there's a positive out of this.
Thank you, Councillor Elliott. Anyone else? Okay, is there obviously no resolution coming out of this? This is more for council's information. Hearing no further on comments or motions or suggestions, we can move on. We have no bylaws that are due for any degree of reading tonight. We have no new business. We have information and question period, no changes to upcoming meeting schedule, no changes to committee appointments. Any announcements / future events? Councillor Rudenberg.
Yes, indeed. So coming up Thursday, August 10th, the West Quesnel Night Market will be happening from 4 p.m. till 9. Lots of vendors, music, and of course, food trucks.
Councillor Elliott.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. It should be noted, too, that we have our first concert since the opening of the arena this Friday. The Rec Laws are playing, so I'd really like to see people get out there and sell this out. It's a very important event for Quesnel. We've got a great band with the Rec Laws here, but further to that, we need a really good showing so that we can, move forward and try and bring more acts in the future. So get out there, buy your tickets, and we'll see you there on Friday.
Thank you, Councillor Elliott. Anyone else? Okay, then gallery questions. No? Okay. So now I will call for adjournment. Moved Councillor Elliott, seconded Councillor Rudenberg. All in favor? Carried. We'll take a 10-minute recess in order to prepare for a closed council meeting. Thank you.